BMW is no stranger to challenges, but one particular misstep hit them where it hurts the most: their wallet. This year, the German company known for luxury, power, and precision lost over $5 billion off its market value. First, there's the issue of recalls, then came slow sales, particularly in regions where other car makers started stealing the spotlight. Add to this the pressure of stiff competition from companies like Tesla, which is dominating the electric car market, and rivals like Mercedes-Benz, which continues to outshine BMW in some luxury segments. But here's the thing about BMW, they're not the type to throw in the towel. Just when everyone thought they might be down for the count, BMW decided to flip the script. Recently, they made an announcement so bold that it sent ripples through the entire automotive world. So what exactly has BMW just said, and will this help the company recover its value and image in the market? Join us as we discuss this and more. You see, sometime in September, BMW's shares plummeted and they had to issue a profit warning that really shook investors. At one point, they saw a jaw-dropping 5 billion euros wiped off their value. The root of this problem was a fault in their braking system, and not just a minor glitch. It was a big enough issue to force a recall of about 1.5 million cars. According to leaked documents snagged by Bloomberg, BMW struggled with this issue for over 2 years. Yep, 2 whole years. Apparently, complaints from both customers and dealers about faulty brakes started rolling in as early as June 2022, but it wasn't until September 2024 that BMW really grasped the full scale of the problem. Can you imagine the stress of realizing this 2 years after the first complaints? Fixing the issue isn't coming cheap either. BMW estimates the repair bill could climb to a staggering 1 billion euros. That's not pocket change, even for a car giant like them. It didn't stop there. The first major recall happened in February 2024, pulling back around 80,000 vehicles in the United States alone. This recall was based on an in-depth review BMW kicked off in October 2023. By the way, this wasn't just a BMW issue. Some Rolls-Royce models also got caught up in the mix, which adds a whole new layer of prestige problems. Industry expert Ferdinand Dudenhofer from the Center for Automotive Research in Bochum didn't mince words about the situation. He called it a significant shock, pointing out that this isn't just a typical recall, it's a major hit to BMW's reputation for precision engineering. What's more, BMW isn't just sitting back and hoping for the best. They've ramped up their quality control measures, even creating a special task force to work with suppliers. That's a clear sign they see this issue as more than just a one-off glitch. It's a wake-up call about risks across their supply chain. Of course, BMW has long been known for its focus on stability and caution, prioritizing consistent performance over risky short-term gains. This approach is evident in their typically steady profit margins, but even the most careful plans can hit a bump in the road, especially when unexpected manufacturing defects crop up. Reports say the problem started in a plant in Hungary. Picture this: tiny smudges or a bit of dust on circuit boards. It sounds like such a small thing, but in a car's intricate electronic system, even minor contamination can throw performance out of whack. The only silver lining so far is that there haven't been any accidents or injuries linked to the defect. Andrew Graves, a car industry analyst and emeritus professor at the University of Bath, weighed in with some sharp observations. He pointed out that the growing number of recalls across the automotive world is shining a spotlight on a crucial question: are car makers really keeping a close enough eye on their supply chains? With increasingly complex systems and globalized production, the stakes are higher than ever. This isn't BMW's first dance with a major recall. Recently, the company had to recall tens of thousands of luxury vehicles from its 2024 model lineup due to a steering system defect. The affected models included the BMW 5 Series, both electric and conventional variants, the sleek 7 Series, the futuristic i5 and i7, and the high-performance M5. All of these were made at BMW's Dingolfing plant in Germany. Here's the nitty-gritty. The issue lies with a double universal joint in the steering spindle. If this joint fails, drivers might find the steering unexpectedly stiff or jerky. Imagine being on the road and suddenly struggling to steer. Definitely not something you want in a luxury car, or any car for that matter. Luckily, no accidents or injuries have been reported. BMW, staying true to its reputation for responsibility, is tackling the issue head-on. The company has announced it will replace the faulty parts at no cost to customers. Globally, this steering issue impacts 21,955 vehicles, with just under 5,000 of those being driven in Germany. The Federal Motor Transport Authority, KBA, in Germany, has even assigned the recall its own reference number, 14353R, to keep track of everything. Over in the United States, BMW of North America announced a recall in October of 2024. This wasn't just a small issue, it affected nearly 1,000 vehicles from the 2024 and 2025 model years of the 5 Series, 7 Series, i5, and i7. The problem? A defect in the steering spindle's double universal joint. Yep, it's the same issue that popped up in Germany. Thankfully, BMW has assured everyone that there haven't been any accidents or injuries linked to this defect in the United States. Small silver lining, right? But let's not sugarcoat this. Recalls aren't just about fixing cars. They cost BMW a truckload of cash, and more importantly, they chip away at people's trust in the brand. Customers start wondering if their car is next, and investors, they're not exactly thrilled either. This kind of trouble can shake even the most loyal fans of the iconic brand. And that's not all. BMW is also grappling with a massive sales slump. The company recently revealed that it's been hit with extraordinary challenges. What's behind this? A perfect storm of slumping sales in China, a costly vehicle recall, and an overall crisis that seems to be sweeping through Europe's auto sector. Here's where it gets brutal. From July to September of 2024, BMW's net profit nosedived, down a whopping 84%. The company pulled in 476 million euros, which is around $512 million. To put that in perspective, analysts were expecting better, but BMW's results were even worse than feared. Vehicle deliveries were another sore spot. The numbers fell 13% compared to the same period last year. And in China, which has been BMW's golden goose for years, deliveries dropped by a staggering 30%. Ouch. Overall sales for the company dipped nearly 16%, landing at 32.4 billion euros. China is where the real trouble lies. For years, German car makers, including BMW, have leaned heavily on the Chinese market. After all, it's the world's second largest economy, and around a third of BMW's sales come from there. But things are shifting. China's economy is going through a rough patch, and local car makers are stepping up their game, especially when it comes to electric vehicles. These homegrown rivals are giving BMW and other European automakers a serious run for their money. Let's not forget the human side of this. Recalls and slumping sales don't just hurt profits, they mess with the brand's reputation. BMW has built its name on precision engineering and luxury, but when things go wrong on this scale, it's hard not to question what's happening behind the scenes. And with electric vehicles becoming the next big thing, BMW is under pressure to innovate and stay ahead of the competition. Despite the rough ride BMW has been on lately, CEO Oliver Zipse is keeping a positive outlook. In the face of plummeting profits, declining sales, and a costly recall, Zipse didn't shy away from addressing the challenges, but emphasized that the company isn't throwing in the towel just yet. In the fourth quarter, we are back on track for stronger earnings in order to achieve our annual targets, despite planned high upfront expenditures, he said, aiming to reassure both investors and BMW's loyal customers. Of course, words alone aren't enough. To back up Zipse's upbeat tone, BMW will need to deliver results. This means not only addressing the technical issues that led to the recalls, but also proving that it can adapt to shifting market demands. In an attempt to give itself another chance, BMW has just announced something very interesting that has shocked the entire car market. And trust me, this isn't just another concept car that'll gather dust in a showroom. It's the real deal. In a joint statement with Toyota, BMW revealed their plans to roll out vehicles with hydrogen fuel cell powertrains as part of their next-gen lineup. After putting their BMW iX5 hydrogen pilot fleet through its paces worldwide, BMW is now gearing up for series production. They've already proven that this tech works, and works well. So what's next? Starting in 2028, BMW will integrate hydrogen fuel cell vehicles into their existing lineup. This isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy. BMW is positioning hydrogen tech as a perfect complement to battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, and even good old internal combustion engines. In other words, they're not saying hydrogen is better than batteries. They're saying it's another way to power the cars of the future, especially for situations where battery power might fall short. Let's talk about why hydrogen is getting so much hype. Unlike battery-powered cars, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles don't need hours to charge. Instead, they refuel in minutes, just like a gas-powered car. And while batteries are great for city driving, they can struggle with long-distance trips, heavy loads, and towing. That's where hydrogen steps in as the hero. Michael Rath, BMW's vice president of hydrogen vehicles, explained it perfectly. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are basically electric cars with a different energy storage system. The motors, power electronics, and most of the guts are the same, but instead of relying on a big battery, hydrogen cars use a fuel cell to generate electricity on the fly. It's like comparing two types of smartphones. Both get the job done, but one has a slightly different operating system. Now, BMW's Neue Klasse platform is not just another fancy name for their new electric vehicles. This setup, which is going into production in 2025 in places like Hungary, Mexico, and later in China, has a cool trick up its sleeve. It's flexible enough to swap out its big EV battery for hydrogen tanks and a fuel cell. Yep, hydrogen. BMW says they'll be using Toyota's third-generation fuel cell stack for this. And get this, it's going to be 50% cheaper to produce and give 20% more range per kilogram of hydrogen. That's some serious innovation. Here's where it gets interesting. BMW hasn't explicitly said so, but if we were placing bets, we'd say one of their future SUVs built on this Neue Klasse platform might just roll out with a hydrogen fuel cell in certain markets. Think about it, an SUV that doesn't just run on electricity, but can also use hydrogen. That could open up a whole new world for zero-emission vehicles. But here's the catch. Where exactly can you sell a hydrogen-powered car? According to Frank Weber, BMW's chief of development, any market they target for a fuel cell vehicle needs a really dense hydrogen fueling network. And let's be honest, that's a tall order. Japan, South Korea, and China are leading the way here. These countries are heavily investing in building hydrogen fueling stations, making them prime candidates for BMW's hydrogen tech. The European Union is also stepping up, requiring both DC fast charging stations for EVs and hydrogen stations for fuel cell vehicles. So Europe might be another solid market. North America, though, it's a tougher sell. Setting up DC fast chargers for EVs is already a massive task, but it's still way cheaper than creating a hydrogen fueling infrastructure. Hydrogen stations need to be spaced about every 50 miles to serve the same number of vehicles as EV chargers. That's not just expensive, it's a logistical headache. Now the truth is, if you're hoping to see a hydrogen-powered BMW cruising down your street anytime soon, you might want to keep those expectations in check. For example, in the United States, California has been the only state to offer retail hydrogen fueling for over 10 years. Even then, it's been a bumpy ride. Back in the day, there were promises of 100 fueling stations by the year 2020. Guess what? That didn't happen. Instead, California managed to get about 60 stations up and running, and even those have struggled with reliability. To make matters worse, some of these stations are now being shut down entirely. Ouch. And it's not like hydrogen-powered cars have been flying off the lots, either. Take the Toyota Mirai, for instance. Across 2 generations of the model, Toyota has sold only about 15,000 units since it debuted in 2015. To sweeten the deal, most of those sales came with hefty incentives. Think rebates and perks. Honda and Hyundai have tried their hand at hydrogen cars too, but their sales numbers are even lower. Clearly, we're not exactly living in a hydrogen revolution just yet. BMW, much like Toyota, is holding on to a big idea. The future of hydrogen fueling stations might lie in big rigs. That's right, those massive Class 8 semi-trucks that haul goods across the country could be the key to building out the infrastructure we need. The logic is simple. Hydrogen fueling stations designed for these commercial giants could eventually cater to passenger cars too. But here's the catch. These stations would likely be located in industrial areas like shipping ports, warehouse hubs, or other places where semi-trucks hang out. The big question is, do drivers of fancy BMW SUVs really want to roll up and fuel next to an 18-wheeler in a gritty parking lot? Not so sure about that. So what's BMW doing about all this? Quite a bit, actually. They're teaming up with Toyota and working closely with hydrogen producers and fuel distributors to map out how these stations might look and where they could go. BMW's Jürgen Goldner, one of their hydrogen tech leaders, mentioned they're in close talks with these partners to push the infrastructure forward. But here's the kicker, even BMW isn't sure if their future hydrogen-powered cars will be sold in the United States. It all depends on how the infrastructure shapes up. Goldner said they're keeping a close eye on how different regions develop their hydrogen networks, and decisions about where to sell the cars will come later. People love to point out that battery electric vehicles are champs at producing way less carbon dioxide per mile than hydrogen fuel cell cars. That's totally true, but Rath, the guy in the know, has an interesting counterpoint. He says hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, or HFCVs, can hold their own if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture of energy systems. Here's how it works. Imagine using green hydrogen, which is hydrogen made entirely from renewable energy sources like solar or wind power. This renewable energy would otherwise just go to waste when there's an oversupply on the grid. That's a cool idea, right? But the catch is, for now, and probably for the next few years, most hydrogen is still being made by using loads of energy to break down natural gas, which spits out carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Not so green after all, huh? Now, Rath brought up an interesting scenario that really makes you think. Picture sunny Portugal. They could generate way more solar energy than they need, like way too much. So what do they do with the extra? Here's the genius part. They turn it into hydrogen. Why? Because it's pretty much the only way to ship that clean sunny energy up to places like chilly and cloudy northern Germany. Hydrogen becomes this bridge connecting the places that have too much sun with the places that don't have enough. Kind of like sharing energy love across borders. Speaking of hydrogen, BMW and Toyota are doubling down on it. These two auto giants have been teaming up on hydrogen tech for the last 10 years, and they just announced they're going all in for the future. To make the announcement, BMW's chairman Oliver Zipse and Toyota's president Koji Sato appeared in a video together. Now, the video wasn't just the usual boring corporate talk. They showed off some really cool stuff, the Toyota Mirai and the BMW iX5 Hydrogen, which are their current hydrogen-powered cars. But they also took us on a little nostalgia trip. There was a hydrogen-powered BMW 5 Series sedan from way back in 1979, and even a fuel cell-powered Toyota Hilux pickup truck. Oh, and fun fact, the first ever hydrogen-powered vehicle to hit public roads was the experimental GM Electrovan way back in 1966. Talk about ahead of its time. The video wrapped up with a fun little scene. Sato drove Zipse right up to BMW's headquarters in Munich in a shiny BMW iX5 Hydrogen, and guess what? They couldn't stop talking about how smooth and fun the ride was. Sato even made a point to highlight the sheer driving pleasure you can get from a hydrogen-powered car. Sounds promising, right? But will hydrogen cars really catch on with drivers in places like the United States? That's the big question. For now, it's all about getting people on board with the idea and making the tech as green and accessible as possible. So yeah, while battery electric cars are stealing the spotlight right now, hydrogen might just be the underdog worth keeping an eye on. Who doesn't love a good underdog story? Another thing that BMW needs to get sorted out is its new 2025 BMW X3 SUV. For years, families have loved the BMW X3 SUV. It's like the Goldilocks of cars. Just right, it's not too big, not too small, and it strikes the perfect balance between excellent chassis engineering, powerful engines, and a premium comfy interior. This formula made it a go-to choice for folks who wanted a reliable luxury SUV that didn't compromise on performance or style. But here's the thing, the brand new 2025 BMW X3 doesn't quite hit the same sweet spot. While it's improved in many ways, there's one glaring flaw that might leave you scratching your head. Let's start with the good stuff because there's plenty of it. The new X3 has grown a bit, which means more space for passengers and cargo. Always a win if you've got a family or a lot of road trip gear. It's also smarter than ever, thanks to an upgraded infotainment system that feels sleek and modern. The engines are still impressive, whether you go for the entry-level 4-cylinder or the sportier options. And in terms of versatility and practicality, it's as reliable as you'd expect from BMW. For context, the lineup starts with the xDrive 30, a 4-cylinder 2-liter model priced at just under $50,000. If you want to go all out, there's the M50 xDrive with a price tag of over $64,000. Either way, you're getting solid performance under the hood. Now, let's talk about what's not so great. The interior of the 2025 BMW X3 feels like a major step back. For a brand that's known for delivering luxury, this SUV's cabin just doesn't live up to the hype. It's not just one or two small details either. It's a collection of little things that add up to a disappointing experience. First, the door handles. They feel hard and cheap with a clunky sound when you use them, almost like something you'd expect in a budget car, not a BMW. Then there's the gear selector paddles behind the steering wheel. They've got this odd, fragile feel, like you might break them if you press too hard. The entire door trim feels underwhelming too. Hard plastics that make you wonder if BMW forgot their usual attention to detail. If that wasn't enough, there's this strange semi-rocker panel on the door. It's supposed to be a multifunction slider, but it feels more like an afterthought. It moves so easily that you're left wondering if it's supposed to wiggle like that or if it's just poorly secured. It doesn't scream luxury, and even the air conditioning nozzles have issues. The guides for redirecting the airflow feel loose, with more play in them than you'd find in a decades-old car. They make a cheap-sounding click that's completely out of place in a vehicle this pricey. It's these kinds of details that remind you this SUV isn't living up to the BMW standard. Then you realize other oversights so glaring that the X3 gives a sense that BMW has flooded the front of the car with extravagant ambient lighting as a ruse to hide them. The ambient lighting has been removed from the rear, for example, and the panoramic sunroof no longer opens. You know that feeling when you're expecting something luxurious, but it just doesn't quite hit the mark. That's kind of the vibe with the new 2025 BMW X3. It seems like BMW poured so much cash into certain areas of the car that they ran out of steam and money when it came to making the interior feel as premium as you'd expect. For a vehicle that's long been a favorite in the mid-sized SUV world, this feels like a bit of a misstep. The 2025 X3 comes in two flavors, the 30X Drive and the sporty M50 X Drive. Both are all-wheel drive, but they bring different energy under the hood. The 30X Drive is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder gasoline engine. Think of it as the reliable, practical option. The M50 X Drive is the adrenaline junkie of the pair, boasting a 3-liter inline 6-cylinder turbo engine that's ready to party. Unfortunately, if you're into hybrids, plug-in hybrids, or even diesel options, you're out of luck. BMW's Spartanburg, South Carolina mega plant makes all those versions, but they're not bringing them stateside this time around. A bit of a bummer for those who want a greener or more diverse lineup. If you're trying to decide between the two, the 30X Drive is where most people will land. Let's break it down. It's a hefty $14,600 cheaper than the M50X Drive, with a starting price of $49,500. That's a lot of cash you can save or spend on fun extras. The 30X Drive is a leaner machine, weighing in at 4,176 pounds, which is 359 pounds lighter than the M50. That translates to better fuel efficiency too, 29 miles per gallon versus the M50's 27 on the EPA combined test. With 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, the 30X Drive still has plenty of oomph. It can hit 60 miles per hour in 6 seconds flat and has a top speed of 130 miles per hour. That's more than enough for most daily driving situations, and probably a bit of fun on the weekends too. The 30X Drive comes with smaller 19-inch wheels, which tend to give a smoother ride compared to the M50's larger tires. If comfort's your priority, this is worth noting. Here's where things get a little tricky. While the X3 drives beautifully and has the performance stats to back it up, the interior might leave you wanting more. BMW seems to have stripped back some of the finer details that once made the X3's cabin stand out in the luxury SUV crowd. It's not that the interior is bad, it's just that at this price point you'd expect a bit more finesse and flair. The materials feel more utilitarian than upscale, and while the design is functional, it doesn't have that wow factor. This lack of premium touch is noticeable, especially when you compare it to some of BMW's competitors, who seem to be upping their game in this department. So the SUV is not all that bad. However, BMW definitely needs to fix some things. So what do you think about this? Let us know in the comments section. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest videos. While you're still here, click the video on your screen to see more interesting content like this one.